First off, do I even give off Dragon Ball fan vibes? Honestly, Dragon Ball was one of the only anime I watched until I was well into my college days. That's right, ladies. I'm a later-in-life weeb. I've been a Dragon Ball fan since I was around 9, and I got my friend's copy of Budokai 1 to borrow, and I fell in love instantly. I've played pretty much every Dragon Ball game that has come out in the States, and even some that weren't. And Tenkaichi 3 has always been my favorite. Raging Blast 2 is a very close second. Don't at me, the mechanics are really deep for a Dragon Ball fighting game. So as you can imagine, I've been foaming at the mouth for Sparking Zero ever since the announcement a couple years ago. And I loved the game. It's awesome. It's gorgeous. It runs like a dream. It's oozing fan service, and it's the first time we have some of the super storyline in a fighting game. That being said, I would be lying if I said it was perfect. And I'm honestly disappointed with several aspects of the game. For a game that was in development for 4 years, some of the choices Bandai Namco made are baffling to me. I know I'm not really a complaint channel, but I really wanted to showcase a lot of what's been bothering me because I feel like a lot of the discourse has just been talking about how perfect the game is instead of some of its genuine flaws. That's why I wanted to showcase some of them here. Maybe I'm just on the wrong side of Dragon Ball Tube, but I have some complaints. I've broken my critiques into 4 categories. You can see them here. That's right, this is a Stealth Data Analytics episode. My critiques fall into 4 categories: game content, story mode, character choices, and mechanics. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you like deep dives into my constantly changing ADHD hyperfixations. Section 1, game content. Before we get into the meat of my complaints about the story mode, I have some other issues I want to bring up first. First off, I love that you can create custom tournaments, but why the fuck can't you change the number of rounds that are in any given tournament? They're all locked to 3. We've been able to make tournaments between 3 and 5 rounds since Budokai 1. Granted, that was based on difficulty, but this is a crazy choice and makes the tournament mode feel like an afterthought. Next up, battle mode is about as bare bones as you get, and it's a ton of fun to play with friends online and get into random matches with all of your favorite what-if scenarios, right? But the biggest oversight here comes in local multiplayer. My buddy Norbanks and I booted up the game. We went in to do an old school bro down with a couple of our favorite characters and realized we couldn't change the battle map to anything other than the hyperbolic time chamber. For local multiplayer, this guts its replayability significantly. We got bored incredibly quickly just having the same style of fight in the hyperbolic time chamber stage, and I really hope this is just a short-sighted decision that can get fixed in a further update. It's just incredibly boring to throw Goku at your boys at the same stage over and over. My last complaint admittedly feels a little bit abstract. It feels like there's something missing. Every other Dragon Ball fighter since Budokai 1 has had some sort of alternative mode to story and regular battle in tournament. I suppose you could consider custom battles as this extra mode, but when you compare it to things like the Red Ribbon Army battles in Budokai 3, or the Satan mode in Budokai 1, or even Ultimate Battle in Tenkaichi 3, one of the most substantial side modes we've ever gotten in a Dragon Ball game, it feels like there is significantly less content here. Sim Dragon is one of the coolest things that has come out of a Dragon Ball game, and for it to be replaced with a, here, you figure out what the extra content is, feels really underbaked and like a cop-out. It feels like they just threw in a Mario Maker mode because they couldn't think of anything else interesting. I really feel like something special could have been put in here. I don't know what it could be, but I hope it comes in a future update as well. That being said, post your favorite custom episodes that you've played from around the community in the comments below. I'd love to see a lot of them. Section 2, story mode. I'm not gonna lie, I am the most disappointed with the episode battle mode. I was more hyped than anyone for how exciting all of the what-ifs scenarios were going to be. I mean, just seeing that you could go and do something else with the Raditz fight in that first trailer was extremely exciting. So imagine my disappointment when I jump into the first story mode and finish it completely, and there are less what-ifs in total than there were in the standalone what-if battle mode in Budokai Tenkaichi 3. It felt really disappointing. There's a total of 4 what-if episodes for each character that's not Goku. It just feels really lame. Next, specific character stories. I feel like a lot of the decisions that were made for this mode were not made by a Dragon Ball fan. Let's go episode by episode and lay out all of my critiques. First up, we have Gohan's story. It starts at the Android Saga. You know, when Gohan's already been trained by Piccolo, has watched him die, has done a whole bunch of other cool things. And don't get me wrong, Kid Gohan is one of my favorite characters of all time when it comes to Dragon Ball, but starting his story at the end of his initial arc feels really dumb. Let's talk about what that means was cut. All of the training and the fights in the Saiyan Saga. All of the development with Piccolo, Piccolo's death, his fight against Vegeta going into the Spirit Bomb thing, right after his tail was cut, all of that's missing. All of the fights he did on Namek. He had an amazing fight with Goldo, with Ginyu Goku, and of course, the awesome Origin Rush attack from all of the other Budokai games that came from his fight with Frieza's second form. You're missing a lot of Gohan's development, and while his story does go into Super, it still feels like a lot was gutted here. Next up, let's talk about Piccolo. I'll give credit where credit is due. Piccolo's main sparking line is by far the best in the entire game. It gives him a lot more depth. It gives him a lot of cool moments with Gohan. It's amazing. It also accurately starts in the Saiyan Saga, has all of his good fights that lead up to the fight against 17. And then it stops at the 17 fight. You know, where like Piccolo's story ended in Budokai 3. There's no fight with Cell Juniors, there's no what-if fights later on, and there's nothing that has to do with the Buu Saga. What about when he fights Super Buu with Gotenks? That's always been a playable fight where you switch out. Feels like that was just lost. He also has some really good fights in Super. I know we're going to get additional DLC when it comes to Super Hero, but that still means that all of his fights in the Tournament of Power are completely missing here. This feels like a real snub for Gohan's real dad. Last up, Vegeta's, and I feel like this is the most egregious problem with the story mode overall. Vegeta's story begins on Namek. I'm not the biggest fan of skipping Vegeta's parts of the Saiyan Saga, but I'll let it go. If they didn't also cut Vegeta entirely from the Super storyline. Even though Trunks and Goku's stories have Vegeta playable in them, Vegeta has no individual Super storylines. It's blasphemous. They reference a ton of Vegeta's stories in Super in the other stories, but you don't get to see any of that development. What does that mean in plain English? It means Vegeta's fight against Frieza during Resurrection F is completely gone. It means that his fights with Cabba and Hit are completely gone. It means that you don't have any of that development with Cabba. It also means that all of Vegeta's fights against Zamasu through the Future Trunks arc are gone too. But you know what it cuts most importantly? It cuts Vegeta's top fight in all of Super against Toppo when he goes God of Destruction mode and gets Blue Evolution. This makes absolutely no sense to me because Toppo's God of Destruction mode is a form change in this game. They had it in there. They referenced the fight in Goku's story, but didn't give the actual fight to Vegeta. It makes absolutely no sense. They really snubbed the Prince of All Saiyans with this. Section 3, character choices. This is going to be a pretty short section. I really only have 2 complaints. If you're wanting to see a big long section about everything that's missing, that's not this video. Go watch somebody else on that. I know there was a lot of disappointment with the roster. It's going to get updated and I'm not too concerned. My real disappointments come with the exclusions of characters that were in Tenkaichi 3 and are just not here. Primarily, honestly, the Great Ape forms of the other Saiyans. Especially Gohan not having a Great Ape form. When that happens in the same part of the Saiyan arc, it feels wild to me to eliminate those when they've been in the last 2 Budokai Tenkaichi games and continue to call this the next Tenkaichi game. The other thing is admittedly a little nitpicky, but it does force you to retrain your brain when you're coming up with teams. Certain characters in this game are treated as standalone characters, completely separate from their existing lines. What does this mean in plain English? Cell Perfect form cannot transform in battle into Super Perfect Cell. It treats Cell as 2 completely different characters. There are several other weird issues like this, and I don't know why they would have decided to completely separate these out when all of the other characters can transform into their full lines. It doesn't make any sense to me. Section 4 is all about mechanics. We're gonna go rapid fire here. Why is every custom battle with DP locked to 15? Why can't you change the DP amount to try and create a more interesting experience? You should be able to edit the DP mode in one-on-one for online. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me as long as it's excluded from ranked mode. Why does the health bar disappear half the time when a character gets hit by a Ki Blast? You have no idea how much that Ki Blast did. I'll hit Vegeta with a Kamehameha and Vegeta's bar will disappear for half a second and I won't know how much damage that does. It's stupid. The grapple and the beam clash minigames are not clear at all. It's the first time I felt like in a Dragon Ball game I had no idea what I was doing. Classic controls are not classic and feel impossible to use. Lots of enemy AI is either too stupid or too smart. I did a tournament today on Moderate where the enemies just kept jumping in the same spot up and down, firing Ki Blasts, and switching between transforming into the next form and just reverting back to base. It made no sense and totally brought me out of the experience. This goes back into the custom battle thing. I've messed around and tried to create a couple scenarios. Why is the text editor so limiting? And why aren't there options to make certain words plural? You have to pick Saiyan. You can't use Saiyans. So a lot of the titles you would come up with, like Gohan, protect everyone from the Saiyans, can't be done because Saiyans is not a word. This is an easy fix and a small option that they could add in an update, but I don't think they will. Ooh, this is a good one. Clear conditions are not shown when you start a fight. You have to open the menu and manually check what the actual clear conditions are. Clear conditions for branching paths are so unclear also. For example, in Piccolo's story, there is a separate clear condition where you have to beat Frieza quickly and don't give you a timer or anything or any semblance of what that quickly would mean, which forces the player to get out their phone and do it a few times to figure out what the timeline is for them to have to beat Frieza in. It's incredibly obtuse for the sake of it. It doesn't make any sense. Last and honestly, one of my biggest gripes with story mode. 95% of the narrative parts that aren't speaking lines are not narrated between scenes. This feels extra egregious to me because Dragon Ball has 3 of the best narrators in history, and they chose to only use them during the final episode of each character's sparking montage, instead of keeping us immersed in the story mode by having the narrators read the individual directions like they're supposed to. This is never going to get updated. This is always going to feel like a complete yanking of the cord when it comes to the story mode, and I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get over this one specific thing. The other thing about it is some players may never actually experience the sparking episodes, so a ton of the player base may never even get to hear the narration done. Why would you do this? That felt good to get off my chest. I'm not going to lie. Now, a lot of these are things that could be fixed in a future update with DLC, right? They could add additional modes, they can fix some of these character things, they'll probably continue to add updates to the custom battle mode so it's a better experience, right? But for a game that has been in development for 4 years and had so much hype behind it, you would think they would have put more care into figuring out what players liked from the original 3 Tenkaichi games and tried to translate that over. They clearly focused a lot on being able to play with your friends online, which is great. It's a really seamless experience. But if the meat of the game is not there, you're losing a lot of what makes a Dragon Ball game fun. You're messing around in the world of Dragon Ball, not just trying to play with your friends all the time. I really hope Bandai Namco continues to update the game and make it a better experience than it is here on day one. And I hope that this video becomes out of date very quickly because all of these things will be fixed. If it is, feel free to tell me in the comments down below. If you liked this video, feel free to give it a like. If you like this kind of deep dive over whatever I'm focusing on that week, feel free to hit that subscribe button. We've got a lot of cool things coming up. Anyway, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.